She's never alone because she's scared of what she might say to herself. Always drinking in the back room of the bar where everyone turns in a half-hearted grin.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFantasy to get yourself a $20 rebate on your first purchase. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at redrock_bball and across on Facebook at facebook.com/redrockbasketball. Of course, you can check out all of this stuff that we do over on Basketball Monster at basketballmonster.com and out at our Twitter account, BaskMonster, at BaskMonster, of course, where we have our all our news that goes down in the NBA, and over on the site, all our projections for your DFS needs. We're going to talk about the 4 games that we had on Sunday, including the end of the first series in these playoffs, and then we're going to preview the 3 games that we have got on Monday. So
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start off with the perfect DFS lineup for Sunday's action. On FanDuel, it was Russ at 75.8, Chrissy Paul at 53.8. Paying up for point guard was the way to go. Lou Williams at 32.4 and Big Gerald Green at 25.4. Like I said yesterday, it's not Rondo missing that's causing the series to switch. It's starting Gerald Green. You know that I'm being facetious with that, and obviously Rondo missing is a big part. But Green was fantastic in this game, and it just shows how weird things can actually change and swing games and swing series. At the small forward position, it was the Joes from Utah, Joe Johnson at 39.3 and Jinglin Joe Ingles at 35.7. At power forward, Thaddeus Young, 31.0. That's the last time we'll have to talk about him in these playoffs. Derek Favors, 29.4. And of course, as everyone picked it, Nene at 42.5 for a total of 365.8. And that cost $58,600 on DraftKings. It was Russ at 85, Jamal Crawford at 32.75, Joey Johnson at 41, Trev Ariza at 31.75, Steve Adams 36.75, Chrissy Paul 57.25, Jinglin Joe at 38, and Nene at 45, and that was a total of 367.5, and that cost $49,900. That's all the action from Sunday's games. Well, that's the perfect. It's the perfect lineup from Sunday's action. Let's talk about those games that we did have go down. But before we do that, let's have a quick word from our sponsor. And today's sponsor is, of course, SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts has always been a confusing process, but for forever, basically. But not now. It's always been hard to find those tickets and get the best value that you can find. But SeatGeek makes it easier. They get all of these random ticket sites, put them together in one spot, so you don't have to go and browse 6, 7, 8 different sites to find the tickets. And then SeatGeek puts them all together by creating this app and this website that puts it all together and shows you where the value is. SeatGeek's the first place that you should be looking to find tickets. It's the first place that I look to find tickets to any event that I want to go and see. SeatGeek does all the price comparison for you. It looks through these sites and says, oh, this is a good deal. This is not so good a deal. And it makes it clear as anything on the site. Green, good. Red, bad. I think we can all follow through with that logic. They give you the most bang for your buck. They save you time and money, and each ticket is given a grade based on value. Best of all listeners to this podcast get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. NBA playoffs are in full swing. You want to go see an NBA playoff game, as I know that there's plenty of people who listen to this podcast who do live in Australia who have traveled over to the US, and they are going to see NBA playoff games at the moment, and they have undoubtedly used SeatGeek to get themselves the best price and to get that $20 rebate off their first purchase. And to get your $20 rebate, it's simple. Download the SeatGeek app and go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. When you do that, enter the promo code, which is straightforward. It's LOFantasy. LOFantasy. Once you do that, and then once you make your first ticket purchase, SeatGeek will then send you a $20 rebate. Really straightforward. Costs you nothing to download the app. You save money on the tickets and you get $20 back in your own wallet as well. So download that SeatGeek app and use the promo code LOFantasy today. All right, let's break straight into these games and talk about what actually went down on Sunday. There were 4 games. The first one, Cleveland, Indiana. There's obviously no implications for the Pacers moving forward because they are done. The sweep is over. The Cavs won by 4. And very similarly to last season when the Cavs swept the Pistons in the first round, it was a sweep. But there were never massive blowouts. Obviously, we had that big comeback in Game 3, a 4-point game here. A squandered lead in Game 1 from the Cavs. Just games that they never seemed like they were going to lose, but never seemed like, or they never were smashing them. And it's just the way the series has gone. LeBron was great, 33, 10 and 4 with 4 steals and 2 blocks, and Kyrie had 28 points with 3 blocks of his own. Obviously, he didn't sit out the final quarter in this game, ended up with 37 minutes, and Kevin Love played 35. Now, Love was horrendous with just 2 of 13 shooting on only 5 points, but 16 boards sort of resurrected some of his value, while Darren Williams went bananas. 14 points in just 13 minutes for Darren. It was definitely the day for the old 2009 NBA stars to really get things cracking with Darren and Joe Johnson later on. And Jamal Crawford as well, to be honest. Tristan Thompson had 11 boards in his 34 minutes, and J.R. Smith continued his fully shitful season by scoring 5 points in 29 minutes. We had Shumpert with 17 minutes and Kyle Korver with 18. I think we're going to see that. We're under 20 for both of those guys, and Smith went under 30 as well. For the Pacers, not much to talk about except for the big performance of Lance, who had 22, 6 and 3 in 30 minutes, and Miles Turner at least ended the season on a positive note with 20 points on 80% shooting. He is going to be a real interesting one next season. I think he can finish next season as a top 20 player. The status of Paul George is going to have an impact on that. If George leaves, I do think that actually really helps what Turner does from a fantasy point of view. Obviously, the team will suck a lot more, but it will help what Turner can do. And if Jeff Teague happens to re-sign and Paul George is traded, then massive bump for Teague, who had 15, 4 and 10 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. And shout out to Jeff Teague for losing the last 12 consecutive games against LeBron in the playoffs, 12 and 0 or 0 and 12 against LeBron in the playoffs. So shout out to for Jeff for that.
My name is Jeff.
His name is indeed Jeff. They're not playing again, the Pacers, so we're going to cover them fully when we do the season review podcast on the Pacers in the next few weeks. Let's talk about the next game, the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Rockets get the victory on the road in Game 4 to go 3-1 up in the series, 113-109. The end of this game was bizarre for a number of reasons. The end of the game on the court was bizarre with curious decisions, and that's the theme of a lot of these playoffs is curious decisions. And then, of course, you've all seen the press conference with Russell Westbrook intercepting a question for Steven Adams and not answering the question. And yeah, just lots of it. I'm not even going to go into that too much because there are lots of opinions on, the reporter's trash. He shouldn't be asking that question. Actually, I will get into it. I think the question was fine, and the question was directed at Adams. Probably didn't need to be pushed on 3 or 4 times. I appreciate everything that Russ was doing there and saying he would take that question and he'll shut it down. He'll put the blame on himself. No problem with it whatsoever. But again, the question was directed at Adams. So a lot of people saying, why would you ask Russ that question? He didn't. He didn't ask that question to Russ. He asked it towards Steven Adams. And so a lot of people do get confused with things like that. But no problem with what Russ did. Really, obviously you want an answer out of Adams, but Russ, no problem with anything that he said. No problem with the reporter asking the question or even going back to it for a second go. For the Rockets, Trevor Ariza had been horrendous through a majority of this season, or this postseason, the first 3 games, but he stepped it up, 14, 5 and 3 with 3 steals and 3 triples. He was never going to be as bad as he was. He has struggled against the Thunder at times, but it was good to see him get back on track. While Eric Gordon, 36 minutes for the second consecutive game, 18 and 8 with 4 triples and 2 blocks. He has been really impressive. While Ryan Anderson has been the opposite of impressive, 9 points in 20 minutes. And I will continue to say it, Ryan Anderson's just not that good. He just isn't that good. He's definitely not consistent, and I think we're going to see more of that situation of Ariza at the 4 and playing more Eric Gordon and Lou Williams. Lou Williams was good too, 18 and 7 with a pair of steals in his 32 minutes, and Nene was really, a massive factor in this game late. 28 and 10 for Nene in 25 minutes. What a signing that was from Daryl Morey. He was a perfect 12 of 12 from the field, and normally I'm against not giving Capella big minutes, but when Nene's playing like this, Knock yourself out. That's what you need to do. The Rockets with a really predictable 8-man rotation as well. Those 8 guys are playing every single game. Capella wasn't terrible. It's just that Nene was clearly on fire in this one. Jimmy Harden, 16, 7, and 8, apparently playing with a tweaked ankle. His production has been down, and he has not been the greatest of DFS options through the majority of this series, as we've talked about quite a bit. He was only 31% on his 16 shot attempts. On the Thunder, Russ had a triple-double, 35, 14, and 14 with 3 threes, 3 steals, and a block, but inefficient once again, just 36% from the field on 28 shots. Got to the line a lot, obviously, but it's still a big performance, and you needed a big performance to justify that ginormous salary that he was putting up on the DFS sites. Vic Oladipo, finally, it did come for him. And these are the sort of lines, minus the assists, that we thought that he could do. 15, 4, and 2 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. As I've said a multitude of times, one of the biggest reasons for the fall of what Oladipo's ranking was this season is his defense completely disappeared. His assists cut in half, and his defense disappeared. Now, Billy Donovan is not a good coach, in my opinion. He makes lots of questionable decisions, and his reasoning for those decisions is often poor. I've talked about it when they said, why aren't you playing Taj Gibson more? The answers never made sense. And then Eric Horn today, who I have been discussing this with a little bit over Twitter, he went and asked Donovan the question today, why aren't you playing Victor Oladipo as your backup point guard? Without saying that Norris Cole is shithouse and Samaje Cristton is terrible. But we both know, or we all know, that they are. Why aren't you playing Victor Oladipo as your backup point guard? And Donovan's answer was, well, during the season, we haven't done that. I'm aware you haven't done that, Bill, because Oladipo's played 55 minutes, or 2% of his minutes at point guard this season. We haven't done that this season. We've gone with Samaje, we've gone with Norris as our backup point guard through the season. And that is technically correct. It is also incorrect on about a million other levels, because just because you have done something doesn't mean it was the right thing to do, and doesn't mean it continues to be the right thing to do. Now, I am generally anti teams throwing up completely foreign concepts in the playoffs. Weird things like the Blazers starting lineup that hasn't played together all season. The Bulls running the 3 alphas and Mirotic, we hadn't played all season. Starting Gerald Green and playing him big minutes. There's just stuff like this happens, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. But in this one, it made sense from the moment that Oladipo got traded to the Thunder. It was poor coaching to never do it at all during the season. So while I do applaud him saying we won't do it now because we haven't done it during the season, and I understand that can be a problem, a continuity problem and a learning problem, but the reason you haven't done it during the season, Billy, is your own fault. So you get the blame for that, for not actually recognizing that is the best option for this team and letting Oladipo handle things on the second unit. That is the best thing for this team. And like the other day when he said, I would have liked to have played Kanter more minutes, it's your choice. It's your choice to play Kanter more minutes. It's not anyone else's. So you would have liked to. Well, if you would have liked to, do it. Straightforward. Same as this one. We didn't do it because we haven't done it before. Do it. It's been the dog's ballsy, most obvious solution the entirety of the season. And the fact that you haven't done it is a massive, massive negative against what Donovan does with this team. He had great coaching last season in the series against the Spurs, and it made us all turn around and go, hey, Donovan, he's worked something out. And it played, but I don't think that he's that good a coach. And this Oladipo thing is really bothersome to me. Also, the fact that you're getting games where Adams and Kanter aren't playing all 48 minutes at center. Someone else is playing center minutes on this team. Now, maybe that's Taj, but he's still not playing enough. There's just questionable decisions. But the Oladipo one is the biggest one that's bothering me. I know that was a mini rant on that, but it's just frustrating that this is a common sense, a common sense thing that should have been done from, and it definitely immediately after Cameron Payne got traded, or at the start of the season when Cameron Payne was injured. There was literally no excuse for playing Samaje Cristton ever. Oladipo needed to be that guy handling the ball in that second unit, and while I do applaud that I'm not changing things now because it's the playoffs and we haven't done it all season, the reason you haven't done it all season is because you're inept. Steve Adams had a big game finally. We've been waiting 2-3 months for this to happen. 18-7 for Steve in 37 minutes with a steal and 3 blocks. It's been a while coming. I wouldn't be relying upon it every single game, but it was nice. Also, Andre Robertson. What is going on with this guy? Yes, they hacked the shit out of him on free throws, and he was a putrid 2 of 12. That's disgusting, especially for a perimeter guy. It's really bad. But his production, especially DFS-wise, has been through the roof. 13 and 4 with 2 steals and 5 blocks. He's getting the extra minutes mirroring Harden, and he is an enormous perimeter defender, but he's actually producing really good fantasy numbers, and his salary continues to rise, but rightfully so. He's putting it together. Taj wasn't as good as Game 3, 6 and 2 in 22 minutes, but still, he needs to play more than that. Well, Doug McDirt had 5 points in 19, and Alex Abrines had 5 points in his 15 minutes. Let's move on to the next game. Also, Norris Cole, 9 minutes, no points, minus 18. He is terrible. He is terrible, and people will always go and defend him. Oh, he won 2 rings. Cool. Did he? Or did he just happen to be on the team that won 2 rings? It is the flimsiest, worst excuse narrative when you're talking about shit players. Oh, he's won 2 rings. Or even when you're talking about good players. Hasn't won a ring. He's won 5 rings. It is the bullshittiest excuse or argument of all time. Norris Cole is bad. He was bad in Miami. He was horrendous in New Orleans twice. He's horrendous in Oklahoma City. That's just who he is. And when I say horrendous as an NBA backup point guard, 8th man type of role. It's not who he is. He's bad, and he continues to be bad. Boston and Chicago. Isaiah Thomas, 33, 4 and 7 in the Celtics victory to even this series up 2 games apiece. A really solid performance from Isaiah. Fred Hoiberg going off a little bit in the post-game press conference, trying to get his own Take That for Data t-shirt happening, talking about Isaiah Thomas carrying the ball. I don't think it's getting you anywhere, Fred. Sorry, mate. I do understand where he's coming from, but that literally never gets called anywhere, and it's not exclusively Isaiah Thomas that's doing it. Al Horford, 15, 12, and 4 with a 111. It was a good Horford night. Well, Gerald Green, what world is this where Gerald Green comes in, starts, and is literally a difference maker? 18 and 7 for Gerald in 23 minutes with 4 triples. He was laying down the smackdown on some big dunks. He was hitting threes. It was all happening for Gerald. Marcus Smart had a very Marcus Smart line, just 5 points on 7 shots, but a 111. 8 boards and 6 assists, and this is why he continues to be an intriguing fantasy player, not for the scoring, but for those abilities to rack up those other numbers. Jay Crowder had 11, and Kelly Olynyk looked pretty good as well. Didn't miss a shot, hit all 4 of them, only played 16 minutes. And to me, it continues to be a failing to me of Stevens, just not being able to use Olynyk correctly. 10 and 3 with a 111 for Kelly, and it was not a good night for Avery Bradley, who had 8 points in 34 minutes. Interestingly, Amir Johnson out of the rotation completely. Again, weird, this stuff that just you haven't done it all season, and now Amir Johnson's just done. Tyler Zeller out as well, and they were replaced by Jonas Jerebko, who had 2 points in 10 minutes. Jaylen Brown basically out of the rotation as well, played in about the last minute of the game, or 2 minutes, and ended up with just 59 seconds, and didn't register a stat. He has been pretty poor in these playoffs. Speaking of poor in the playoffs, the Chicago Bulls, no Rajon Rondo, so Jaren Grant started. He played 5 minutes. Didn't come back after that at all. Ended up with 1 assist for the night. He was replaced by Michael Carter-Williams, who played 8 minutes and had 1 assist. So the 2 point guards on this team combined for 13 minutes and 2 assists and no other stats. And then we got Isaiah Canaan. Isaiah Canaan is bad. He's really bad. The fact that he is playing over Denzel Valentine is not ideal. Canaan is horrendous, really. Grant was horrendous. Carter Williams was horrendous. Now, Canaan played these big minutes, and you just know that this is going to mean that Canaan is going to play big minutes in the next game. It's almost a guarantee. I would have liked to have seen them run with more Butler and Wade and had Valentine out there to space, or even run Valentine as the point guard, but it does run you into a problem of who defends Isaiah Thomas then. Obviously, Carter Williams can defend him a little bit. Grant can defend him. Canaan can defend him. Valentine can't, and that puts extra stress on Jim Butler. So I do understand that to a degree, but Isaiah Canaan with 34 minutes is not a playoff development that I saw coming. 13 minutes, 2 rebounds. Try again. 34 minutes, 13 points, 3 triples, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals for Canaan. Nikola Mirotic, 13 and 7 with a couple of threes. He was solid, and Bob Portis had 8 and 8 in his 23 minutes. Not a bad Bob performance. He looked okay, but it's still Mirotic's job and Mirotic's minutes the most of the time. One thing I do have to give Højbjerg plenty of shit for is the complete absence of Robin Lopez. 22 minutes for Lopez, 8 and 7. Did not see the court at all in the fourth quarter. Barely played in the second half. Just baffling. Lopez was the big factor in winning games 1 and 2. And the last 2 games he's barely played and they've lost. Now, some of it's coincidence, but it is a contributing factor. And Lopez needs to play more than that. I liked what Felicio did, but you still need to play Lopez more than 22 minutes. I'm sorry. The last game of the night, the Los Angeles Clippers and the Utah Jazz. The Jazz get a huge victory here, 105-98. We'll start with the Clippers side of things. Chrissy Paul, 27, 9, and 12, just missed the triple-double. So obviously it's a bad game for him. Without Blake Griffin there, just a huge performance from Paul once again. And Jamal Crawford was fantastic also. 25 points, 5 triples, but it came on 69% shooting.
Giggity!
And we know that 69% shooting is not something that's going to be able to be sustained throughout the series. And he's been pretty poor through the first 3 games. This was a great night for him. Ray Felton also stepped up with 11 in 21 minutes. And Luke Marmute still did his thing. 5 and 5 with 3 steals in 34 minutes. And given the pricing that he is at, that's not bad. JJ Redick had 12 points and nothing else. And DeAndre had 12 and 10. And interestingly, Doc Rivers decided that, with Blake Griffin out, he would start Maurice Spates next to DeAndre Jordan. Maurice Spates and DeAndre Jordan for the entirety of the regular season played 99 minutes together. 99. And then your first choice is, even though you had Blake Griffin out for 18 games during the regular season, and you played... Okay, you don't have Austin Rivers there? Yep. Paul Pierce, Wes Johnson, Brandon Bass, these other guys who did well in this role, except Pierce, in this role, you could have started them. But no, let's go to a lineup that we literally have never tried at all through the regular season. Now, Spates ended up with 21 minutes, 5 and 4. It wasn't a disaster, but it's still just a confusing thought process when these guys just don't play together and you're using Spates exclusively as a center, and you've got other options there. You've got Bass, you've got Johnson, you've got Paul Pierce, who actually played minutes in this position, in this role during the season. As bad as he is, it's confusing. Bass did not see the court at all. Wes Johnson played 4 minutes. These are coaching misfires from Doc. We had 0 points from Paul Pierce in 12 minutes. Confusing. The Jazz. Rudy Gobert returned. Doubtful, questionable, probable, playing. That was the process of Gobert's status over the last 24 hours. But he played. He was on a little bit of a minutes limit because he was in these really short stints as he was getting back from the knee, but he didn't look bothered by it. He played 24 minutes, had 15 and 13 with 2 blocks on perfect 6 of 6 shooting. It was all systems going. I imagine he'll be back to 35, 36 minutes in Game 5 for Gobert. Well, as a neutral fan, you would hope that's the case anyway. And then just as it looked like the Jazz were getting everyone back and everyone's ready to go, Gordon Hayward eats something wrong. Some fish, pizza, too much alcohol. Probably not. But something. And he's got food poisoning. And he has to have IVs before the game. And he's playing the same short stints that Gobert was playing. Heads back to the locker room to get an IV. And the Jazz just say, mate, just go home. You're done. And they send him home. And that was it for Hayward for the rest of the game. So the Jazz can't catch a break. He only had 3 points in his 9 minutes, but what it enabled is it enabled Joe Johnson to go bananas. 28, 5 and 5 for his second game-winning performance of the series. What a weird thing that is to say. It enabled Jingling Joe Ingles to go bananas as well. 8, 6 and 11 with 2 steals, 2 triples and a steal. He is going to get a huge contract, and he deserves it because he is bloody good. It also enabled Rocket Rodney Hood to finally step up and show us that what we know he can do. He's had a dreadful season. He's been bothered by injuries, foot injuries, knee problems, pants shitting episodes all through the year. But finally, he stepped up. Now, I had a discussion with someone on Twitter today. He might even be listening to this podcast, one of my followers, that said, the Jazz shouldn't be playing guys that, building a team, you shouldn't be playing guys who aren't good players or don't have the potential to be good players. And he said, Hood shouldn't be playing. I said, that's a curious decision. He said, I don't think that Hood's good. We've seen what he's done and he's peaked. I completely disagree with that. And then, almost immediately after he said that, Hood started going off in that fourth quarter. I think that Hood has had a bad third year, but I think he's a real future potential, not all-star, but a decent, a really good starting level player. And we saw it in his second half. Now, I don't know whether he's going to be able to sustain that. It hasn't been a great year for him, but If Hayward happens to miss Game 5, which I don't think he will, then Rocket is a guy that we look to step up. I really dislike the Quinn Snyder, we can't play Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert together situation. They basically only played centre today, 24 minutes for Favors, 17 and 6 with 2 steals, so that we had to get our 10 minutes of Boris Diaw as a starter. Diaw was finished last year, he's finished now. There's no reason. I would like to see more Favors Gobert together. Well, Georgie Hill had 13, 1 and 2 in 41 minutes. Interestingly, Hull Neto was the backup point guard for this game, but we still got 5 minutes of Shelvin Mack. Who knows why? And then we got Dante Exum re-exhumed for 3 points in 12 minutes. So again, some more curious, weird coaching, and the Neto-Mack combination backcourt is literally something that should never happen ever, especially when you can throw out Rocket, Georgie Hill, Jinglin Joe. You got those 3 guys that you can put out there. Throw Joe Johnson in that mix. Throw Exum in that mix. Like, we don't need to see Mack and Neto playing together. But the Jazz get the victory, and they even the series 2 games apiece. All right, let's talk about the games that we're going to have come up now on Monday. We have got 3 games of action on Monday for the NBA and for our DFS perusal. The first one of those is Game 5 in the Milwaukee and Toronto series. Series tied 2 games apiece. The Raptors here are favored at 6 back in Toronto, and the total is a miserly 192.5 points. No injury concerns for us to be bothered with. We obviously want to pay really close attention to what Casey does with the starting lineups. If it wasn't Dwayne Casey coaching, I would say I would be stunned if Norman Powell didn't start again. But it's Dwayne Casey coaching. It did take until game 86 of the season for Powell to actually start with the other starters, not in place of DeMar Carroll, not in place of DeMar DeRozan, but to play alongside these guys. And I don't think he's going to abandon it after it works so well. So I think we're going to see more of that. Let's go to the point guards here. We'll go to Kyle Lowry first. He is an $8,600 player on FanDuel, and he's 75 on DraftKings. It goes without saying that I like that a lot more on DraftKings at 7,500. He had 34 in the last game, and that's not far off where it needs to be. At 86 on FanDuel, though, yes, the pricing and the ratios are up and down respectively. But at 8,600, there are much better point guard options that are going to be available on the board, I think, than using Lowry outside of a GPP type of scenario. I hope that Delon Wright has fully elevated himself over Corey Joseph. He's a $2,100 player, so I wouldn't hate having a squiz at Delon there and saying, hey, I'm loading up on some big price guys and other positions, my Yanni, my Steph, my Johnny Wall, those sort of guys, and maybe Delon comes through with a 14, 15-pointer. It is a possibility. At 2,100, he has to be considered. At 23 on DraftKings, he also is in discussions for that GPP spot. As for Malcolm Brogdon, 5,400. The minutes have been down the last 2 games, under 30 minutes for Brogdon. There really isn't much in that cheap-ish, mid-priced point guard range on Monday. So if you're looking for someone, and I think spending up for point guard is going to be the way to go on Monday. But if you want that, you don't want to take a flyer on a Delon Wright or a Brandon Jennings or someone like that, and you want to go mid-priced and balance your salary, Brogdon's got to be the way to go at 5,400. He is due to have an improvement in his production, so I think he's worth a look there. I'm not really that keen on Dellavedova, especially with his salary staying up at 3,600, and Corey Joseph had -2 in the last game, so safe to say we won't be getting too interested there. At shooting guard, you have to look at Norm Powell. You have to. In cash, he's at 3,100. He dropped 25 in the last game. If he starts, if he plays 30 minutes, he's smashing that. That's 6, that's 7, that's 8. That's even 10x potential there for Norm. He's at 38 on DraftKings as well. There is a risk that there is a bust factor, but we haven't really seen it from Norm all season. When the minutes are there, when the role is there, he comes through. And I think that's the situation we're going to find ourselves in here. Yanni at 10,700. That's not the best way to spend 10,000 to me. To me, if I'm spending 10, I'm spending it on John Wall. Now, Yanni can obviously go off, and he's got probably that higher upside than Wall. So Wall, you might feel more confident about getting 50 or 55, but Yanni's got the ability to go for 70 or 75. So that maybe swings him as a GPP guy, but it doesn't feel great. If I want a higher price shooting guard, which is not 100% the way to go here, it's DeMar DeRozan at 9,000. I feel like he'll get me 45. and I feel more confident about him getting, if you say to me, will DeMar get 45 or will Giannis get 55? I'll say DeMar will get me 45, and that's what I want to look at in cash. But if I say what's the highest, Giannis can go 75, DeRozan might go to 50. So then Giannis gets the nod there, but DeRozan's the one I look for in that cash game setup. At small forward, Mick Beasley, 1,800. 2 games in a row. He's been in the rotation ahead of Mirza Teletovic. We know that Beasley is one of those guys that can easily drop 20 points in 18 minutes. It's happened before plenty of times. At 1,800, has to be in your pool. Has to be a consideration guy. Chrissy Middleton at 7,000 is not bad. He's obviously not getting anywhere near 5x on FanDuel at that price, but he's obviously got the ability to. And again, we're looking at 4x's on FanDuel more than 5s these days. So yeah, Middleton is fine for one of those mid-priced shooting guard type of players. Same on DraftKings at 66. PJ Tucker, Damari Carroll, Nup. If I'm going any of those nondescript, low-price small forwards, it's Tone Snell. Now, he did have his good game in the last one with 23 points, but I do feel more comfortable with Snell getting more minutes than Tucker and Carroll and having that higher upside, so he does become that tournament upside. And what a time to be alive where I can say that Tone Snell has more upside than anybody in the NBA. At power forward, Serge Ibaka, 6,300. That's the way you go at power forwards. There's not many options realistically in the big man spots throughout this slate. Not many supreme ones anyway. If you want to go a little bit cheaper, then Serge is definitely one of those guys that you can take a look at. I wouldn't be all that interested in, say, Pat, who put up the old 2.7 in the last game. So that's not obviously helping us in any way. At center, Thon McCurr, 3,900 for Thon. He's playing better every single game. And him and Greggy Munro split the minutes down the middle in the last game. 24 minutes apiece, and he put up 18 points. And at 3,900, 18 points doesn't sound like much. But again, in the current landscape of FanDuel pricing, it's not far off. And I don't completely dislike Thon. He's at 34 on DraftKings, and that's a better option. Still probably look at him more as a GPP sort of a player. Jonas Valanciunas back to the bench. His minutes remain the same, and that is not high enough. At 5,400, I'm not keen on Jonas. While Greggy Munro at 6,800 FanDuel, man, that's way too high. I like what Munro can do, but if he's going to play 24 minutes, for him at 6,800, it's too expensive. Now, Greg's at 57 on DraftKings. That is a price I can get behind, and I'd feel relatively comfortable that the dude's averaging 31 over his last 5, and his lowest score in those games has been just 22. So at 5,700, it's a pretty decent floor, but at 68 on FanDuel, I'm not feeling that. Sorry, dudes at FanDuel. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to talk Washington, and we're going to talk Atlanta. We've got this Game 4 happening here with the Wizards leading 2-1. The Hawks are favored by 2.5, and the total is 211.5 points. Otto Porter is listed as probable after not being able to finish the last game, and Ersan Ilyasova is probable with a calf. Jan Mahinmi has been ruled out for Washington, so it looks like Porter's going to play, but he has only played 23 minutes the last 2 games. So it is something to watch. He's not going to be a strong option, I don't think. The point guard battle here, it's all Johnny Wall that we're looking at. He's one of the stronger players to me, at least the more consistent guys at 10,200, 45 to 50 points. It shouldn't feel like too much of a stretch for Johnny to get to that level, so I do really like him. He's at 10-2 on DraftKings as well. No problem. The other guy that you do have to pay attention to is Dennis Schroeder. Now, his salary is jumping. He's at 78 now on DraftKings, but he's averaging 43 points in this series. That's pretty bloody good if you ask me. He's at 78 over on 78 on DraftKings, and he is at 85 on FanDuel. Now, the 85 is probably pushing the friendship just a little bit, but he's not a complete write-off. But 78, I've got no concerns with that. He's putting up numbers fairly consistently for this team, and you can say that he doesn't help the team win, and that's fair enough, but he's getting the minutes and he's getting the numbers, and when you're talking about setting your DFS lineup, that's all you can really ask for. If you want to go cheap on someone, Brandon Jennings is someone to take a look at. $3,000 on FanDuel. He had 17 in the last game, and he's averaging 16 points across this series. $3,000, 16 points, sign me up. That is a totally fine way to go, although I do think that spending up at point guard is the better option. But if you want to go cheap, yeah, Jennings definitely comes into play there. He's had a couple of decent games, and if this game gets blowouty at all, yeah, Jennings is going to see some extra minutes and could really turn the corner and put up some nice numbers. Also, I like the shooting guards here. Timmy Hardaway's down to 5,100. It's fair to say he's been terrible, averaging just 16 points in the 3 games in this series. At 5,100, I'm back on board. A big Hardaway game I think is going to come, so I'm there for that. 7,500 for Braddles Beal. I'm not as interested, but there's definite value there. The same on DraftKings. I think both guys are pretty solid guys to have a look at. At small forward, Otto Porter's at 48. So the salary has come down, but man, Otto's not even getting anywhere close to that really. And with the risk of the shoulder and the risk of Kelly Oubre playing more minutes, I'm just not interested. Kent Bazemore, I'm continually not interested. Taurean Prince I am interested here. 4,300 for Taurean. He had 23 points in the last game. He's had 2 strong games out of the 3 playoff games so far. I'm here for Taurean giving us another 20 and being a really decent option at that price. Same on DraftKings at 44. I don't really have too many concerns about him. As for Oubre and Bogdanovic, they're not solid. They're not solid DFS contributors. So even if Porter was out, which it doesn't appear likely, I might look at Oubre as a tournament guy there, but I wouldn't lock him in as a core guy, even if Otto doesn't make the game. Also, Tabo Cephalosha not playing. Continues to be weird. Markieff Morris, 5,700. Had some decent games in this series. I think one game maybe. 5,700 is fine, especially with a $700 price drop. It's okay. I wouldn't build a lineup around it. Well, Paulie Millsap's another way you can go if you do want to spend up at big man. 8,400 for Paul. He had 57 in game 3. Him getting to 40 is not a stretch. Muscala's playing minutes over Dwight Howard at times. That doesn't mean that you want to use him for DFS though, but at 2,900, if he gets 15 points, you're not far away, but 15 points does seem like it's a little bit of a distance away from Muscala at the moment. At centre, Gortat, 5,600, shit the bed in game 3 after 2 strong performances. I'm alright with getting back on him and getting the 25 or 26 here from Marcin, and I'm definitely out on Dwight Howard at 6,600. So the salary is coming down. It's not coming down enough. On DraftKings, Dwight's at 6,100, so that's getting closer, and that to me is a GPP option. I still like Gortat though at 5,800 over on DraftKings. Let's crack on now to the last game of the night, and it is Golden State and Portland. We don't know the status of Kevin Durant, of Shawnee Livingston, and Matty Barnes. They are all questionable. For Portland, Yusuf Nurkic is out. You feel like this is series done. This is a sweep. This is happening here, regardless of Durant's status. Nurkic is out. They just didn't want to rest him. They didn't want to push him. He was feeling a bit sore. I don't see it happening here for Portland. So with Nurkic out, where hopefully we're going to, and this is completely counter to what we've seen, but in the 2 games that Nurkic didn't play, we saw less minutes from Aminu. In the game that Nurkic played, Aminu's minutes went up. Logic doesn't always follow NBA coaches around. But I think we're going to see a bit more Aminu here. Obviously, if Durant and Barnesy are out, you're going to get more Pat McCaw. You're going to get a little bit more Ian Clark. And you're going to get a lot more Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Iguodala. And you might even get some more JaVale McGee, who's been brilliant these last 2 games. So don't be surprised if JaVale McGee is a decent option. At point guard, let's talk about Steph Curry here, of course. He is at 10,300, and that's a little high. I like what Steph has done, and he was great in the last game. If Durant is out, I would be into Steph at 10,300. If Durant plays, I would definitely be fading Curry at that sort of a salary, but it does depend a little bit on Kev's status. Curry's at 96 on DraftKings, so it's more appealing over there, but it's going to rely upon Durant not playing to me. Dame Lillard, 9,500, hasn't really given us too much to love at that sort of a salary so far, but one of the best GPP options. And if I'm taking a GPP guy, I'm taking Dame over Steph. I'm taking Dame over Kyle Lowry at that higher end point guard market because he's at home. Could be the last game of the season. Maybe he drops a 50. Definite possibility. He could easily have 70, 78, 80 points here. So he does become a really good GPP play. Shawnee Livingston is $1,500 over on FanDuel. We don't know if he's going to play, but maybe. Probably not, but maybe at 1,500 there. When you see that number and you go, this guy's definitely getting minutes and probably getting 17 to 20, it has to pique your interest to some level. But don't get overly sucked in. At shooting guard, CJ McCollum, 8,200. Great game 1, terrible game 2, great game 3, 8,200. I feel like it's a pretty decent bet that he's going to at least approach close to 5x, so he is fine to me. 76 on DraftKings is no worries at all. Klay Thompson, tournament if Durant is out. Sorry, try it again. Klay Thompson, tournament if Durant is in, If Durant is out, I feel much better about using him as a cash game play at 7,500. He's at 65 on DraftKings, so if Durant is out at 65 on DraftKings, I would smash Klay Thompson at that price. I think that's great value. You're getting 30 plus, almost no doubt, if Durant happens to be up. If Durant is in, Thompson becomes a little bit of a trap, in my opinion. The blue swimmer has been brutally bad. Alan Crabb averaging just 10 points in this series. And that's not 10 points from the field. That's 10 FanDuel points. He is at $4,000. You can only look at Crabby as a tournament guy and hope that he hits his shots. But realistically, he's just not that good. So I wouldn't be putting huge faith there. And obviously, Pat McCaw is the other guy that we do need to pay some attention to if Durant happens to be out. If Durant is in, then McCaw might not even play. At small forward, Evan Turner, 4,900. I've liked what we've seen from Evan. I've got no problem in considering him a play on both DraftKings and on FanDuel. He's better option on FanDuel at 49. He's 55 on DraftKings. He does have some value there, but I like Evan Turner here. Aminu at 5,400. I'm making a bet that that Stotts goes to that situation that works better. So when Nurkic is out, he runs more with Aminu, but I don't know. That's what he did in the regular season, except in the first 2 games of this series, he abandoned it. Again, weird coaching. If Durant plays, I don't care. I'm not interested. And Andre Iguodala at 5,600. I think that if Durant is out, Iguodala in cash is actually a decently solid play. Mo Harkless, you can have him. 3,200 for Noah Vonleh. Hasn't been the greatest series for Noah Vonleh, but still, with Nurkic back in the last game, put up 22 points. And he can be an elite rebounder. And if he gets 10 boards at 3,200, a couple of putbacks, maybe a block or two at 3,200 for a guy that will start and could approach 30 minutes. I think you have to consider Noah Vonleh at that sort of a salary. Definitely worth a look. Draymond has killed the Blazers all season. 8,800 for Draymond. He is, I think he's fine to use again. I'd probably take Millsap over him, but it really does depend. I like Draymond a little bit more over on DraftKings, but they're your 2 big priced power forward options that you're going for. Someone here, Kenneth Lowy, says, Matt Barnes, what about him? He's questionable at the moment. If he is ready to go and Durant doesn't play, I don't think that there's going to be much to see with Barnes, because I still think that they will give McCaw a big chunk of those minutes as Barnes is returning from an ankle problem, and McCaw has looked great. So I don't think that Barnes is anything more than a 50th GPP lineup punt option. I don't really see much there with Barnesy. Dave West, Myers Leonard, nah. At center, the only guy we need to talk about is JaVale McGee. He is at 4,100, which is pretty high, but he is averaging 22.5 over this series, which is just crazy to think that JaVale McGee is doing that. He's at 37 on DraftKings. By no means would I lock him into cash, but he has been fantastic in games 2 and 3, and is a real chance to get 20 points again, and that can be interesting in GPP. So consider him, but I wouldn't be looking too hard at him. Weirdly enough, he played more minutes than Zaza in the last game. Pachulia only had 10 minutes. While JaVale saw 16 for those 21 points. So a little bit of a weird lineup situation going on. Also, I hope everything is fine with Steve Kerr. He won't be coaching. There's a real chance that he doesn't coach again in these playoffs. He's having more problems with his back. The back surgery that he had, it causes lots of migraine issues, nausea issues, spinal fluid leakage issues, incapacitating headaches, which I imagine the squeak and the bounce of the ball off the wood and the bright lights don't really help. So he is out. He probably won't coach again, at least this series, depending on regardless of how long it goes, and he may not coach again in the playoffs. So Mike Woodson is going to be in control for Golden State, and just everyone should hope that Steve Kerr is okay in whatever these problems are that he's having, that he can get a handle on it. But this has been 2 years, and you hear talk of guys close to the Warriors saying that a lot of the motivation they get is because they know how sick Kerr actually is and how bad he's suffering, and they do a lot of things for him because they do obviously love what he provides to them. Let's talk picks of the day now before we go. On FanDuel, Jennings at 3,000, Brogdon at 54, and Johnny Wall at 10-2. At shooting guard, Norm Powell 31, Timmy Hardaway 51, and DeRozan at 9,000. To me, Powell is a pretty core cash play. At small forward, Mick Beasley 1,800, El Farouk Aminu 54. At power forward, Vonleh at 3,200. I don't know what that spelling is up there. Serge Ibaka 6,300 and Paul Millsap 84. And at center, JaVale McGee 41 and Gortat at 56. On DraftKings, Delon Wright 23, Kyle Lowry 75, and Johnny Wall 10-2. Timmy Hardaway 5,000, Beal at 74 and DeRozan at 83. Small forward, Norm Powell 38, Evan Turner 55 and Yanni at 99. At power forward, Mick Beasley 24, Ibaka at 62 and Draymond at 84. And at centre, Thon McCurr 34, Muchin Gortat 58 and Paul Millsap $8,000 dues. On Moneyball, Jennings at 35, Schroeder at 69 and Lowry at 81. Powell at 36, Middleton at 64 and DeRozan at 88. Taurean Prince at 37, Evan Turner 51 and Antetokounmpo at 11-2. Vonleh at 44, Ibaka at 61 and Draymond at 82. And at centre, Gortat 5,000 and Munro at 61. On Draft Stars, Brogo is at 7650, Schroeder is at 13250, and John Wall at 18550. Normie Powell at 72, Timmy Hardaway at 8450, and DeMar DeRozan at 15450. Taurean Prince, an amazing minimum salary player on Draft Stars at 5,000, Chrissy Middleton 11.9 and Yanni at 18.950. McCurr is at 5,000 as well, minimum. Ibaka 11.1 and Draymond at 16.6. And Noah Vonleh, also a minimum salary player, $5,000. And Marcin Gortat, 11,200. Don't forget, check out our sponsor, SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code LOFantasy and get yourself $20 rebate on your first ticket purchase. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_Beeble and subscribe to this podcast so you'll never miss an episode. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn. Go ahead and do what it does. Really help the show. Also, leaving a review helps immensely as well. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.